So yeah, the Hugos, 2023 Hugos, super normal year, super normal. Everything's fine. If you're new here, I cover a wide range of awards on my channel. That's not what my channel's for. I'm just nosy and curious, and I just like looking at awards. I look at a whole range of them. I have a video where I look at all of the winners of the 2022 releases, except for, I think, the BFSA, because I misread the dates because they're the one award that labels the year based off the publication. Anyways, I missed a book for that, but I have a video where I rank all the winners for 2022. I have videos where I, talk about short lists and long lists, and I rank my winners, and I do all of that all the time. And I briefly talk about each of the awards in those videos, and eventually one day I'll just do a video where I just talk about all the awards together. That is not this video. We have a lot more to unpack, but just to say, I think awards are interesting, not because they actually measure what is the best book. No award measures that. That doesn't happen. But they do measure something, and they all measure something slightly different, and they all do it in slightly different ways, whether it's with jurors or popularity contests, or maybe a select committee does nominations, but it's popular vote. Is there a paywall for voting? Like, all awards do different things, and it's interesting what that curates. And I like just seeing the range. It helps me figure out, what have I missed? If I've missed anything, it helps me also figure out which awards align with my taste so that I pay attention to them just a tiny bit more. And I'm just nosy. I'm a nosy person. I like to know what people think are popular, and I like to have my feelings validated. That's why I think awards are fun. Not because they're prestigious. I know a lot of people think things are prestigious, and that's why I really got into trying to unpack the Hugos a few years ago. I've always heard about them. I'm a big science fiction fantasy reader, and some of my first work into going over awards on this channel has been to be like, this is me learning about the Hugos, this is my process, because a lot of it is very out in the open. You can look at the Hugo Constitution online and stuff like that, but a lot of it feels really hard for newbies to understand, and luckily I'm surrounding myself with people who have been veterans, who will answer my questions. A lot of them are in my Discord, so if you have questions, feel free to hop over there, and like I said, I will link things down below that I've been using as reference, especially for unpacking this year's mess. But the average person in the world does know what a Hugo is, but they have no sense of how it comes together. No sense. I think the general consensus is that it's prestigious because some group of people, and I don't even know how the average person assumes why this group of people gets to decide this is the best sci-fi book of the year. And in reality, as I've talked about previously, you can nominate or vote for the Hugos if you have $50. Now, 2023 is a weird year. We're going to talk about 2023. But in every other year, that's all that needs to happen. You have $50 that you are willing to spend. You can nominate and vote. It doesn't matter how many books you've read that year. You could have read 0 books that year. There is no qualification other than you having $50, American dollars. And that does mean the pool of people are generally going to be Western, middle-class individuals, probably more white than not, who have disposable income and who happen to care a lot about science fiction and fantasy. So that's the group of people, and it's usually 1,000 to 2,000 people who nominate and vote. And it's connected to Worldcon, and this is the weird thing. No one actually knows what Worldcon is. Everyone knows what the Hugos are, and I'm saying everyone as in you ask someone on the street who goes to a bookstore who likes to read but isn't a fandom person, right? They're just like, oh, I picked this up because it won the Hugo, and I know that that's a prestigious award, which that's my thing. It shouldn't be. It measures something. It's interesting. A lot of my favorite books have won Hugos or been second place. I don't think it's a useless award, but it's a weird award to have such prestige for how it works. And this year, unfortunately, a lot of the cracks have come to the fruition. So that's just nitty gritty, why I care about awards. The Hugos are innately already not this prestigious thing. And let's just go into this year, because I would love to go through the long list like I like doing, but I can't, because the long list makes no sense, and I just can't. It makes me sad. There's a lot of things that make me sad about this whole process, a lot. But for me, the part that I'm not allowed to geek out about is the long list, which is my favorite part. I love the long list. That's where the hidden gems are. We don't have a long list. I mean, we have a long list, but it's not real. It's not real. So, to get some context also, because I think some people get confused about how the Hugos work, there is not a governing body. So I told you briefly about how people nominate and vote. The people who count the votes, the people who are in charge of what is eligible and what is not eligible, the people who run the convention, that changes year to year. I am still not clear how people put in bids for site selection, but basically, a group of people who care about Worldcon and the Hugos decide they want to put in a bid to run Worldcon, and if they run Worldcon, they then run the Hugos, essentially. And sometimes there's some overlap between volunteers from year to year. We'll get into that a little later in this video. But for the most part, there's not really continuation, which is baffling to me because the only big events I've ever run were at my college. I was a ballroom dancer. We ran like ballroom competitions, and that was incredibly hard to run from year to year. And we had a whole lot of like continuation from basically our administration to administration. So running a convention like this seems like we're recreating the wheel every time, and I'm not surprised that it's difficult. But yeah, and there's a constitution that people are supposed to follow, and for a very long time, for the most part, people have followed it. This year, there were enough loopholes in the Constitution, or there is no enforcement of it, because there can't be, that we are where we are. So, that's the thing. There is no body. Everything is volunteer. No one's paid to do this, ever. It is truly a weird labor of love, hopping around project, popularity contest that has prestige. It's a little baffling, but that's where we are at. At least that's my understanding. Again, not an expert. I'm speaking to you as someone who's been trying to learn over the last couple years, and I will link stuff down below, and feel free to do your own Googling, and do not take my word on any of this as gospel, okay? It's just been on my mind. It's literally just been consuming my week, this Hugo drama, in like both a fun and sad way, the way drama can be. So, site selection happened. Site selection for this event was interesting, apparently. So in the past, you had to be at Worldcon to vote for the next location. And not everyone who votes for the Hugos goes to Worldcon. There's always a supporting membership. That's that $50 I was talking about. To go to Worldcon is usually anywhere from $150 to $250, and you have to go to the place where it's at. So, like, if you're in the United States and you could go to Chicago, Worldcon, like, that might have been easy. But, like, it might have been way harder to go to China. Or it's way harder, like, this coming year, it's going to be in Glasgow, Scotland. Which, I guess, note, if you want to nominate, you have to have a supporting membership by the end of January, which I'm thinking I still might do. Although I don't know what I would nominate. 2023 was not my reading year for SFF, unless it was horror, but horror doesn't do well at the Hugos. That's neither here nor there. So that's what it used to be, but then after COVID, they switched it so that there can be virtual submissions, and there was this whole thing about how they, like, worked to get a bunch of people to pay because you have to pay the supporting membership fee ahead of time to, like, vote for a place. So a bunch of people did pay, but there was this whole, like, loophole of they didn't put down their addresses. I will have an article linked down below if you want to know more. But essentially, some people were not happy, but at the end of the day, China got to get the site. And there were a lot of technical difficulties and weirdness going up to this point that had nothing to do with the Hugo specifically. The convention date got moved, the websites were hard to use because of the different, like, setups that China's infrastructure uses for the internet versus, you know, other Western countries. It was a whole thing. For those reasons, I didn't buy a Worldcon membership for voting. I just nominated, because when you get a Worldcon membership for one place, you can nominate for the next year. So I used what I had as my supporting membership for ChicagoCon, and I nominated things, which I have a video for that. For everything I nominated, very little of it made it onto the list, and now I'm starting to sense why. Because nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. It's just all madness. So the site selection happens. There is this, like, one volunteer named Dave who has done stuff in the past. We're not going to spend too much time on Dave, but Dave's a trip. But otherwise, we don't know really anyone who's involved, and there's very little transparency, and everyone's struggling to figure out when our nominations open, how can they get on the website. We don't get our shortlist till July, which is really late. The convention's not till October, and then, you know, in July already, we had the shortlist. I reacted to the shortlist. I was very underwhelmed. I was also like, where is Babel? This doesn't make sense. Babel won the Nebula. It won the Locus. I don't love Babel. I did not nominate Babel, but I knew a lot of Hugo voters who were going to nominate Babel. Like, that was, honestly, it was baffling to me that the spare man would have made it and not Babel. Because, like, yes, that author is a Hugo darling, but, like, the math wasn't mathing for me. But none of us knew. We weren't going to know till we got the long list, who recused themselves or not, whether they publicly went down, you know, we're all a little like, this seems a little weird. And then awards happen. It's not that interesting. At least to me, it wasn't that interesting. And then we don't get the long list. For reference, the long list is usually released within 12 hours of the convention being done because you already have the long list after you've calculated all the votes. It's literally just the spreadsheet of the vote calculations. I showed it on my channel last year when I was doing the long list reaction. It's not a very sexy document. It's literally just, here's how everything was nominated. And then there's this weird weighted situation. I'm going to have a web article down below of someone who's like actually goes into the data of this year and comparing it to past years, because it's fascinating if you like numbers, but also kind of explains a little bit about the sad puppy situation, which is a completely different Hugo drama that we're not getting into in this video. But essentially, nominations are weighted so that what happened in the sad puppy year doesn't happen again, but it also means no one can understand the math, even if they're good at math. Regardless, you don't need to understand that math to know that the numbers from this year don't make sense. But again, we'll get there. So we don't have the long list. We don't even have the reveals for the finalists or anything like that. We have nothing, which is very weird. And then this guy Dave on his Facebook, because apparently he just uses Facebook, is like, now we have to wait. I want to make sure it's done right. And I was busier than I thought I would be in China and blah, 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 blah. And it's all like, okay, how did you even calculate the votes if you don't have your Excel spreadsheet with the numbers? But all right. And time goes by. And sometime in December, we got the reveal of how the shortlist became the final results. And those looked normal-ish. No red flags showed up there, but we were all like, but where's the long list? That's all we want. So all we want is the long list. The long list is the best part. I cannot express how much I like the long list. And we're all just like, why don't we have the long list? And they waited till they had to release it. You have to release it by 90 days after the convention. I think it was released on the 90th or the 91st day or something like that. And it doesn't make sense. The first thing we'll talk about, and it's the big elephant in the news, it's the sexy thing that everyone's been talking about, and it's bad. Like, I don't like it. It's not as, I think, again, I am more upset about the long list, especially because I know Babbel's been doing well. And the thing for me about the Hugos is that it really helps lesser known books get that stupid little sticker and do well. And honestly, this year, everyone was just such a safe pick. It was so aggressively safe. But that said, it was egregious how many things were listed as non-eligible without telling us why. And so R.F. Kuang, Sharon J. Dow, this guy who's a fan writer that I don't know his name, I think is Paul, and Neil Gaiman's Sandman episode and season couldn't be. And the statement we got, again, from Dave. I'm sure there's more people, but Dave is the only one talking to us, so that's all we have. But he said that the reason were, and I quote, "After reviewing the Constitution and the rules we must follow, the administrative team determined those works persons were not eligible." Now, people are like, cool, what are the rules you must follow? That's very important. We have the Constitution. We can read the Constitution. We know based off the Constitution that these people and works are eligible. So therefore, it's in the rules we must follow that these things became ineligible. And everyone's going, what were those rules? Tell us. And he will not. And actually, he's just aggressively rude in these Facebook comments. Like, oh my goodness. I'll share a Blue Sky post that has some of them. Like, this man. Like, there's one thing to quote unquote have your hands tied, which that's like a whole other discussion. Like, why can't you talk about these things? Like, whatever. I'm sure he has his reasons. But it's another to just be a dick about it. Like, actively acting like what he says is crystal clear and no one should have any issues with the statement he has put out. I was like, no, none of us are idiots. We know that you're being obtuse and hiding behind this very vague statement, and we want some specifics. We're not going to get those. This is where I tell you, as of me filming this, we know nothing, and we're never going to know anything. We can only speculate, and you know, how charitable you want to be about the situation is up to you. We're never going to know the answer. It's very suspicious, and it only gets more suspicious the more they won't tell us anything. But it is what it is. There have been statements made by R.F. Kuang. Neil Gaiman has gone into the Facebook comments section And trying to like have a conversation. That was an interesting moment in the day when he showed up. Sharon J. Dow had a Twitter post, I guess, or an X post, whatever they're called now, and apparently made a TikTok. Didn't even talk during the TikTok. Didn't even have music, just showed pictures and stuff like that. And that TikTok was taken down, which doesn't really make sense. Poor Sharon J. Dow is going through it though right now because their publisher's also being nasty about their book, but that's not really relevant to this video. But if you haven't read Iron Widow, maybe go give it a read. But Rebecca Kwong's statement was pretty good. All right, so Rebecca was like, I initially planned to say nothing about Babbel's inexplicable disqualification from the Hugo Awards, but I believe that these cases thrive on ambiguities, the lingering question marks, the answers that aren't answered. I wish to clarify that no reason for Babbel's ineligibility was given to me or my team. I did not decline a nomination, as no nomination was offered. Until one is provided that explains why the book was eligible for the Nebula and Locus Awards, which it won, and not the Hugos, I assume this matter was of undesirability rather than ineligibility. Excluding undesirable work is not only embarrassing for all involved parties, but renders the entire process and organization illegitimate. Pity. That's all for me. I have books to write. Yeah. So, we don't know. It's, that's the thing. So that's like, this is what's also interesting though. There's a 1-2 punch here. So we have works that they knew we would all care about being ineligible, and that's why they drug their feet on releasing the long list. And they have decided that us thinking about our worst case scenarios is preferential to them just telling us the truth. That they made that calculated decision one way or another. But then the numbers are so bad. The long list doesn't even make sense, even with the eligible works, like the ineligible works being in there. And this is where you need to go look at that article. Oh man, they're just, the only way I can describe it is it's like a student in college who's like, shit, I have to turn in this paper, but I didn't do any of the work, and they just make it up. Like, these numbers are not real. They cannot be real. They are anomalous. I guess that's the only thing I can say with all certainty after reading the article, is that they are anomalous. They make no sense. For example, and they go into this in the article, you compare the numbers into previous years, they're so grossly inflated, and it's not that more people were nominating or voting. That's what you would think, right? Well, it's in China. Maybe more people are doing this. No, that's not the case. It's about average, maybe a couple hundred more. Actually, that article goes into how, so people get a certain number of slots when they nominate, and most people don't use all of them, because most people are like, well, I've only read 2 releases that I really want to nominate, so they don't use all 4 or 5 slots. Okay. So it went from like, I think something like people usually use 30 or 40% to like 75 or 80% in some categories. So that's weird, not normal. But also, if it's going to look normal with inflated numbers, the most nominated for category should be novel. Period. End of story. That is the most voted for, nominated for category. It's what most people care about. Every other category, it trickles. Novella, trickles. Series, short stories, they have votes, but it's not the same as the novel category. That's what everyone cares about. The novel, the best Hugo novel. The series category, which again, is not normally well loved. The Founders Trilogy, which I like, got more votes than any of the books in the novel category. Same with most of the series. Like, I think the Locked Tomb series had more nominations than Nona the Ninth. Makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. So just from that alone, it's like, these are not real numbers. And then there's the cliff. The paper also looks into how you usually have this kind of skewed curve, and there are visual representations. So if you like seeing graphs, I might put some here, but honestly, go look at that, that article. And what happens here is we'll have numbers like 800, 800, 800, 750, 750, 750, 50, like huge cliffs in the number data. And like, that's not normal. And it makes no sense. And so it's kind of like, in my head, did you lose the long list and just make it up and kept your already short list that you knew you had? Did you blend numbers together from both voting pools? None of it made sense. The math doesn't math. And because of that, the long list is essentially useless. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, I'm not surprised The World We Made Great didn't make it to the shortlist. It was not a well-beloved Jemison book, but Jemison is a Hugo darling that should have gotten at least 50 nominations. I'm one of them, okay? So that's inconspicuously, like, missing. So is Siren Queen by Niveau, which, again, it makes sense maybe that it doesn't make the shortlist, but Niveau is a Hugo darling, and definitely more than 50 people would have nominated that book, myself included. Like, It's baffling. It's baffling. The math is not mathing. And the whole situation is just like laugh until you cry drama. And, you know, it just sucks. Because I think a lot of people, I don't know, I don't think we're going to actually come out of this with new meaningful changes. The Hugos are known to move at a glacial pace when it comes to change. I think it's just one of those things where this is unfortunately a lost year. That's how I think it's going to be chalked up to. There's really no way to get a recount. There's really no way to get enforced answers. There's no quote-unquote justice. So, I mean, you can go buy Babel. You can go buy Iron Widow. You can go watch Sandman. You can go support the artists who were snubbed. But there are a whole slew of artists who would normally get recognition from this niche group of people who then, by word of mouth, spread books who won't know about those works on the long list, and that also sucks. And also, everyone who did win, they don't feel good right now, and that sucks too. Winning a Hugo is a big deal for these people. It's like, and now you don't know if that win meant anything because nothing makes sense. The math hasn't mathed since the beginning. And yeah, it's a bummer. That said, I still think the Hugos are very interesting. So I'm probably, if I'm not going to nominate for Glasgow, I'm going to vote either as a supporting member or I might show up. I'm thinking about it. The con happens to be in a time of year where I'm not teaching, so it's very tempting. We've wanted to go to Scotland, so I might go out there. You know, it's kind of part of my journey. It's like, well, I've never been to a World Con. Like, that's the thing. We are in a moment of extreme mess in the Hugos, but it's also a moment where I feel like the most of us have learned more than ever before. We're kind of, you know, pulling back the curtain or whatever cliche phrase it is. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to list a bunch of articles and things down below. Also, another video you should watch is the Stitch and Bitch crew, who are all they're the Hugo people I always go to, and they posted first on Saturday. So you should definitely watch their video. They definitely know more than me, and it's kind of a fun, chaotic time because they get on like 5 hours after the long list is dropped, and we're all still just like, what? And we're still kind of like that, but now we've just had, you know, more cathartic bumbling about on the internet and all that. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, I'll also have my awards playlist down below if you just want to look around there. But otherwise, if you just want to let me know you're here and leaving an emoji, leave a rocket ship, because I think that's kind of the Hugos thing. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.